All right, so time to welcome Thomas Wilson with the Negotiations Consulting and Portfolios Playbook. Thank you again.
Well, it's good to be here. Thank you so much. Um, Thanks, Debbie, for putting this whole thing together. Uh, just so all of you know where your money's going, I'm donating. Let's get the virtue signaling out of the way. I'm donating my fee to Sunrise Homeless Navigation Center. It's a place not far from my house that helps men and women entering back into society from prison and people struggling with drug and alcohol addiction. And so, just in case you're wondering where your money's going, the folks that could afford to pay, I just want to thank you, and they thank you. I appreciate it. And in case you want your money back, tough sucker. It's already spent. So negotiation is a critical skill for us as designers, researchers, freelancers, consultants. If we want to be paid fairly, we want to gain influence, and we want to grow our careers, many of us undervalue our work. Some of us fear negotiation, and we think it makes us look difficult or ungrateful for the work or the opportunity. But understanding power is really key here, and how to use it. Because it doesn't always come from a title or seniority. It can stem from your expertise, your track record of results, as the kids say, if you've got the receipts, or your control of valuable information. These are also called gatekeepers or librarians of information and things like that. Sometimes those people that hold that access to important information have more power than the people in the C-suite, right? And so I talk about this a lot with my friend Jeremy. I've done on 2 different shows of his on his podcast, and a little section of his book, Beyond UX, is dedicated to this. But communicating your value, it clearly and confidently changes the dynamic, so that you're not just asking for more money, you're demonstrating why the ask is justified. And this is how we get our needs met. And I'm going to share this deck with you after. It's got lots of information and lots of links and lots of stuff. One of the biggest things for me in this business is what I keep coming back to is people simply don't know who they are. They're not choosing jobs that are best for them. They're best for their DNA, their upbringing, their skill set, how their brain works, their mental models, their neurodivergence, right? So they're not picking the right job for themselves, and they're not picking the right opportunities. And so what happens is they end up struggling, and they end up coping instead of thriving. And one of the things that kind of concerns me a lot that I see online is that typically when people badmouth the notion of archetypes, or they badmouth the notion of mental models, the first thing that they do in order to gaslight or to create a straw man argument is they say, hey, this stuff is BS because Myers-Briggs is BS and it's not rooted in science, and the DISC assessment is BS and not rooted in science. And the truth is, those 2 things are very popular, or they have been in the past. They're diminishing as we speak, but this is a false argument. And the reason it's false is because there are many that are rooted in science and that are very respected. They're respected by NASA, by the military, by Harvard, you name it. The largest organizations in the world do several of these. And so I just want to just burn through these really quick so that you understand that you can go take these and you can get a really good idea of how you solve problems, what your emotional intelligence and EQ is. And anybody can go take an IQ test, but these things are all about who you are and how you solve problems, and how you were raised and your values and things like that, right? Because those are all important factors when we're trying to make smart decisions and when we're trying to sell ourselves in the marketplace. And so the Clifton's Strength Assessment is basically, it's an assessment that kind of measures how you think, feel, and behave and conduct yourself. It goes across 34 themes, and it really is definitive about your specific dominant strengths and your in those specific skills and talents. And the ESCI is really important. It's used by Harvard. If you literally go take the Harvard MBA right now, you will take the ESCI. And if you take any of their strategic leadership or any of those types of courses, their organizational psychology courses, you will take the ESCI. And some of these cost money. Some of them are $100, something like that. And some of them are free. They're online and you can go do them for free. But these are very valuable. They gauge your emotional and social intelligence and whether or not you have the types of traits that leaders have, because not everyone is designed or born to be a leader. Okay, and the big five personality traits. That's ocean: openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. It goes across these specific five dimensions and just gives you a really good lens on your personality and your type, right? And the CAI, the Curtin Adaptive and Innovative Inventory, if you follow me online, you know that I've talked about this one several times. I'm connected to these people. I know them really well. Dr. Curtin was a really smart guy. But he basically says that all of us fall on this continuum, right? And on the far right are the high innovators, on the far left are the high adapters, and the 65% of the people in the middle are basically bridgers. These are those glue people, those people that kind of straddle or are a little bit ambidextrous in how they solve problems and how they're creative, whether or not they're going to be good at code or they're good at design. Or you often hear people talk about the unicorn, and what they're talking about is someone that spans that entire gamut. And it's very rare, actually. Most people favor a specific spot on that bell curve, right? And so all of this stuff is rooted in science. The RDCA gets honorable mention. It's not on the screen, but it's the Reisman Diagnostic Creativity Assessment. And it's basically a creativity assessment that just indicates, it gives you immediate feedback, and it's diagnostic rather than predictive as to where your creative strengths and weaknesses are with regards to creativity and innovation, and your ability to ideate better than others and that sort of thing. So I want you to consider taking these things. Find the ones that are free. Big five personality traits is free. The KAI will cost you about $100. The ESCI, I think, might cost you like $50 or something like that. And Clifton's Strengths Assessment you can probably do for free. But it'll give you a really good idea of who you are. It'll even tell you the types of vocations you should be in. And you'd be surprised. A whole lot of people are choosing to do things that they're not great at, not thriving at, and they don't know why. So let's get into the negotiations. All right. I'm so interesting, I like to quote myself. You have no right to ask for more compensation until you can prove you're currently doing more than your current agreement or job description entails. Okay. If you've got a job description, if you've got an agreement, if you're a contractor and you've got an SOW and you've agreed to do certain things and you go above and beyond, or if you're on a contract and you're making an hourly and you're going above and beyond and you're delivering more than you said you would, and you're just kicking ass, you have the right to ask for more money. And that shouldn't be something that you fear. All right. So we're going to arm you with some tools to give you some strength and confidence going into those kinds of conversations, because they are in a way, they are battles. They're a chess game, right? And so we need to know how to play the game in order to get our needs met. So the fundamentals, these are the basics of what you need to understand in negotiation. You need to understand emotional intelligence. That's your EQ. Effective negotiations are all about being able to read emotional cues and respond to those types of things. Active listening. You need to be able to, use your hands, face, your body gestures, your, nodding, your eyes. It's really important to watch the eyes when we're doing active listening. If someone's talking about something that's deep or meaningful or even traumatic, you need to be able to acknowledge that with your whole person. And it's really important because before COVID, we did all this stuff physically. We did it in person, in situ, and now we do a lot of things over Zoom, over Teams, but you can still see people from your bust up, right? So you can still see people's face, you can still see your hands, you can still see, the upper part of your torso. So just be cognitive of those types of things. Adaptability. You need to be able to. There's a great show right now on Netflix called Rehearsal, And the reason why it's so cool is it literally shows people using diagrams for the different possible outcomes for things that can happen in a situation. And it also shows someone that they rebuild sets for people to go reenact things or act out things in a kind of a psychodrama type format to rehearse in a sort of uh, improvisational way, like how might this negotiation go, how might this, I need to break up with someone, I need to let someone go, and I've never fired anybody before, and I need to be able to do this. And so they rehearse and they practice this stuff, and they do it a bunch of different ways, and they get these different outcomes so that the person can go into that situation with confidence. So you need to be able to be adaptable. And if you've got this rigid idea of how your negotiation is going to go in your mind, and it doesn't go that way, and you get knee deep in it, you're going to need to know how to pivot and how to think on your feet. So clarity and communication, you need to really be able to clearly articulate your value and articulate what matters about the ask. And you need to do it in ways that resonate and kind of build rapport with the other person. And that leads us right into reciprocity. A good negotiation means we all get our needs met, right? It doesn't mean some one person gets over on the other, one person screws the other one over, and you walk away feeling, embittered about the transaction, right? So just know that the giver's gain, right? We're going to talk about that in a second, but you give to get. So here we go, giver's gain. So the giver's gain is a principle. It's coined by Dr. Ivan Misner. He's the founder of Business Network International. And the core idea is pretty simple. Basically, by helping others first, you create a network of people who are naturally inclined to help you in return. One of the things you're going to hear me say over and over again is sometimes people reach out to me on LinkedIn and they have a job, and maybe it's less than I'm willing to accept hourly, or less than I'm willing to accept for full-time work, or I might be busy and just not available. And what I always do is I take the time to say, hey, I'm not really interested in this, but here's 3 people that I know, or 2 people that I know that fit what your needs well. So I always ask in that first email, and I'm going to share more about this in a second, I'll repeat this. I always ask in that first email, who's the contract for, who's the company, and how much is the hourly or the pay band. And so if it's something that I'm not really interested in, I take 2 seconds and I refer a friend, or I refer someone that I know is out of work. And I have a network, and lots of people are out of work right now, and lots of people are struggling. So if you know who does what kind of work, and you have a decent idea, if you go look at their profiles, it makes helping other people a hell of a lot easier. And it's easy to just say not interested, or how dare you, I make $100 an hour and you're offering 60. Somebody else might really be real happy to get that $60 an hour. And so it's real important to understand that, we're here to help and lift each other up. And that's how we do it, is referrals, and by, showing people that, we're thinking about them. So, so on the left that we have, how the giver's gain works in recruiting: help the recruiter help you, provide sharp, tailored resumes and clear job references. If someone's trying to hire you for a healthcare gig, have prefabbed messages that are basically, all you need to do is copy and paste, that explain your worth, why you're great for the job, and list 5 or 6 bullets, or 5 or 6 other of customers or clients or analogous work that you've done that's similar to the work that they're hiring for, and just copy and paste it. This makes your life a lot easier. It cuts down on the application time and cuts down on your stress. So have those kinds of things ready, and help the recruiter help you. All right. In negotiations, the giver's gain is great when you're kind of offering up help for others, and basically people are far more willing to negotiate in good faith when they feel respected and supported, and they feel like you're being kind to them. Yes, recruiters and people, hiring managers can be jerks, Yes, they can ghost people. Yes, they're out here treating people with very little respect. But the thing is the more you respect them, even when they're disrespecting you, the more they're going to remember that 3 or 4 months from now when you say, hey, this isn't a great fit, but maybe something else is, and they'll come back to you. That happens to me a lot. Okay. So it's not about manipulating people. It's about creating value and trust, and it builds goodwill and credibility, right? And so you're paying yourself future dividends by just having good character and doing the right thing. So reciprocity, very similar, right? It's a social and psychological principle rooted in behavioral economics and anthropology. When someone gives us something of value, that their time, their information, their assistance, we feel compelled to return that favor, right? This dynamic is foundational to informal exchanges and formal negotiations. So in recruiting and job seeking, you need to share your those value-rich insights. If a recruiter gives you insider tips about hiring manager role, or reciprocate, do something to help them, right? Engage in mutual benefit. In negotiations, you can use reciprocity to anchor goodwill. Consider what the employer or the client has offered, express gratitude, and build your case by showing and accepting your counteroffer as a mutual benefit. By bringing me in at this rate, you're not just filling a seat, you're getting someone who's ready to contribute from day one. And what we see a lot online is people saying things along the lines of, if I do UX or if I do research, that means I can do it for anyone. Well, that you're preaching to the choir. Everyone on this call, especially Debbie and I, already know that. We already know that if you do good, strong UX, or if you have strong service design skills, that those apply to lots of different verticals and different industries. But the bottom line is you need to make their life easier. You need to make recruiters and hiring managers' life easier and make it easy to do business with you and easy to employ you. And the way that you do that is be who you are and focus on your skills, your specific skill set and your specific industries that you're in. And we're going to talk more about that later, but it's really important to understand that's a crucial part of negotiations. BATNA, so the best alternative to a negotiation agreement. BATNA stands for Best Alternative to Negotiation Agreement. It's a concept from negotiations theory developed by Roger Fisher and William Ury in their book, Getting to Yes. It's a great book if you haven't read it. It basically means the most advantageous course of action we can take if no agreement is reached during a negotiation. In simple terms, it's your plan B. So, if you're negotiating a salary and you're about to get a job, right? And you know that what you want is $100,000 a year, and they offer $90K. You might not budge. If you're smart, you'll try to meet them in the middle, and you'll say, "Hey, how about 96?" And you'll get closer to your needs. Sometimes you'll reject it. It just depends on you and your specific case. But if they offer you more, well, then that's better than your BATNA. That's better than what you're considering. That's over. So you're probably going to accept that, right? So just have that plan B in your pocket. Know the line, that baseline of what you're willing to go past and not go past. And it just all of this also depends on the level of desperation and how long you've been out of work and things like that, because that also colors your decision, right? If you haven't been working for 6 or 8 months and you're unable to pay your bills, you might take a little bit less, right? And it's okay to understand that and to have all that kind of outlined before you go into the conversation. So theories and thought leaders, these are some more good books. An evolutionary theory of economic change. This is an oldie but a goodie. It suggests that business kind of evolves through routines and habitual behaviors. That's kind of the bounded rationality theory, and or next best action based on like abductive reasoning instead of deductive and inductive reasoning. And it basically indicates that businesses, they innovate through trial and error. We talk a lot about this in UX and in design, where people just sort of say, what's our collective knowledge? What do we know now? What's the next best action? Because businesses know something that a lot of designers don't, and that's that making no decision is far more costly than making a bad decision. And so they might make a bad decision in haste, pursuing, speed, velocity, scale. They use all these terms, but so they're not really gonna. They don't really provide the time to do really great quality upfront research a lot now, and that's kind of going out the window, and we're seeing a lot of that happen. But basically, this book was talking about that many years ago, and it basically highlights that negotiation is kind of seen as an evolving process where your past experiences shape your future strategies and reinforce the importance of learning from prior engagements. So the way that you're going to get better at negotiation is just like anything. It's get out there and do it. You get out there and do it and apply some of these principles. And you're going to have a lot to work with after this presentation. Another book. This is one of the most important books I've ever written. Ralph Waldo Emerson on compensation. His essays basically explore that all actions yield corresponding rewards or consequences. And he's all about character. He's all about reciprocity, those things that I was just saying, the giver's gain. He's basically says every act rewards itself. So pay yourself future dividends by laying those foundations. If you refer people right now, if you build relationships with certain recruiters, the good ones, okay, they don't forget you. They come back. Okay, I've had people, offer me jobs, and the conversation went so well. A year and a half later, they reach back out to me and they offer me something different because it's more in line with what I was originally asking, because they put a note in their CRM or something and remembered me. And I had already forgotten them, and then went back through my emails and thought, oh yeah, I remember this conversation. So just know that the kinder you are to people, and the more you tolerate the BS things that they do to you, because we can't really control that. We can only control our responses. The more likely you are to lay those foundations and plant those seeds of goodwill that will net beautiful results and come to fruition in the future. And he basically, this whole book is about doing that. It encourages like longitudinal thinking and negotiations, and always maintain your integrity, always maintain your fairness. Don't flip out on people. Don't get upset because someone's offensive or they ghosted you, or you had a great conversation going and they just dried up and went away and they're not communicating with you anymore. Trust me, everyone deals with this. Just let it go. Daniel Kahneman won the Nobel Prize in economics, and this was a bestseller. And he introduced a lot of really interesting things to the world, System 1 and System 2 thinking. You need to be able to think more rationally and kind of slow down your thought process in order to make intelligent decisions. I would say those would be your longitudinal career decisions. And System 1 is fast and intuitive, but sometimes it can be really wrought with bias, right? And so three of the things that he really kind of expressed as far as negotiation was anchoring bias. That first number you put out on the table heavily influences the outcome. This is and loss aversion. People fear losses more than they value gains. And framing effect. How do you frame the value? How do you frame your value? How do you frame the opportunity? And if you notice, if you've ever bought tickets from a scalper, like for a concert or for a sporting event, one of the first things they ask you is, hey, why are you selling the tickets? And the minute they ask you that, they're pulling you into a very specific web, said the spider to the fly. They basically are saying, they want you to get you to say out loud that I don't need this ticket because it's an extra ticket, or my wife couldn't come, or I happened to buy 3 and it's only 2 of us. As soon as you say that, they're like, oh, okay, so you don't need it. And what they're getting you to do psychologically is say, yeah, this is pretty much a worthless piece of paper to me. And if it's a worthless piece of paper and I can't do anything with it, well, then you're going to accept $10 or $20 for it and not $100. And so that's one of the things that they do. It's a technique that they do at a pawn shop too. They determine if you're selling something, whether or not you want to pawn it and just get a little bit of money, or whether or not you want to sell it, or how desperate you are. Because if you're desperate, they're going to give you less money. And that's just a fact. And so we need to be confident. We need to be really cool and clear in our value. And we need to understand how to articulate that stuff and not show our hand too much like a poker game, right? So this is a great book, Negotiation Genius. It emphasizes it's all about the preparation and emotional intelligence. There's a lot about the EQ here in this book. And it basically argues that negotiation is a process of influence rather than conflict. It shouldn't be something that you think is combative. It shouldn't be something that we look at like you're on two opposite ends of the polarity, like of a continuum. You need to look at it like what we're doing is we're trying to trek to the middle, and we're trying to find common ground. We're trying to make sure that you get taken care of, but I also get taken care of, right? And so interest-based negotiation, which seeks to align both parties' deeper needs rather than just positions, encourages the use of mesos, multiple equivalent simultaneous offers. We used to call this the choice between two or three yeses. What I see a lot of people do when they're trying to set up a meeting, or when they're trying to set up some type of callback or whatever for an interview, or even for a client meeting, what they end up doing is they end up saying, hey, would you have any time next week? Well, that's a silly, wasteful query, right? When you say something like that, or when you say, hey, do you think we could touch base next week? You're wasting your time and their time. When you say something like, on Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday, I have 8 a.m. to noon open. If we just need to touch base for 30 minutes, you're giving them a wide open bunch of opportunities to say yes to. You're giving them a bunch of different options. So that's what the multiple equivalent simultaneous offer thing means. And you can, that it's more of a, you get a higher likelihood of acceptance when you give someone, several options to choose from, as just opposed to just some random kind of general query as to, can we communicate later? So focus on cultural differences. This is really important, being that this is kind of an international conference. It's just a fact that the Japanese do not negotiate the same way that people in North America do. We do not negotiate the same way as folks from India, as folks from China. And so you need to understand that maybe, sometimes in North America or Latin America, we can be a little bit more open emotionally. And whereas, a lot of those Scandinavian and Nordic countries, they kind of are a little bit more neutral. They don't show their feelings a lot. And sometimes folks are more animated than not. Sometimes people are afraid to offend others. That happens a lot in India. So they don't tell you exactly what's going on, which builds can build stress and contention. But you need to know where you are, and you need to know who you're negotiating with. If you're doing international work, or if you're in another country, you need to know how those people get down, and you need to respect the culture there. I saw this thing one time just recently. It was probably about 3 or 4 months ago. And in Japan, when you go to a meeting and you're in an office space and someone hands you their business card, you're supposed to look at it, reflect upon it, and then put it down and treat it with respect, and like put it on the desk. Okay. Whereas in America, when somebody hands you their business card and you're sitting at a table and you're about to negotiate or talk, you just sort of throw it in your folder and in your notebook, or you put it on your laptop, or you drop it, whatever, or you put it in your pocket real quick. You don't even look at it and put it in your wallet, whatever. You do lots of different things, but all of those things that I just mentioned that we do very commonly here are considered raging disrespect. So just know that in different countries, they do things differently. And so that's what's really kind of interesting. One of the main important things about this, Chris Dew. I don't always agree with Chris Dew on some things, but he's built a real big name for himself, teaching people how to freelance and contract, and he's a big proponent of something that I do, which is negotiation scripts. You need to have a script ready. You need to have the conversation kind of laid out about how you think this conversation is going to go and the possible outcomes, and you need to kind of risk mitigate what it would look like if it went left versus right, up versus down, whatever. And so one of the things that he's really big on is value-based pricing. And I'm here to tell you that if you are somebody with 20 or 30 years of experience, you can do value-based pricing. But if you're somebody with 5 or 6 years or 10 years of experience, you're gonna be working at the behest of whatever the company is saying they're going to pay hourly. You might be able to negotiate a few dollars more or whatever, but basically that stuff is kind of set. You know what I mean? It's set by what they're willing to pay. Sometimes it's market stuff. Sometimes they're just being cheap, and they've already gone through RIF, a bunch of reduction in force, and they're hiring people back at 20% less. So you just need to know the difference between when to do that and who can and can't do that, and who can and can't get away with that sort of thing. So those are some real important books and things that you might want to check out. Let's understand power and communication, because this is really important, right? So sources of power in negotiation: legitimate power. Legitimate power is derived from individuals' formal authority or role within an organization. That's going to be your CEO, your VP, your director. If they have that power, then whoever their reports are under them are reporting to them, so they have that power over you. And a lot of people, one of the things that I think is really disastrous about what's happening in society and in business is we're tending to lean towards this everybody's the same, we are all equal in business and in life. And the truth is, it's just not true. It's not true. And most businesses, unfortunately, function on a caste system or some type of feudalism. We don't like that. We think it's shitty, but it's just true. So if it's true, we need to know how to play that game and how to adapt to it and how to respect those layers of power above us. Because if you don't, you're going to get trampled on, and you're always going to be the person at the bottom of the pyramid crying about what the people at the top of the pyramid have. And it is a pyramid. It's not a continuum. So expert power. Expert power comes from specialized knowledge and skills or credentials. Plenty of people don't necessarily have a degree in their field, but they know a lot, and they're very smart, and they have a lot of value. There's a lot of people online that Henry Ford dropped out of 7th grade. Steve Jobs and Bill Gates both dropped out of college. And so we see that all three of those people have a tremendous amount of power and influence on the world, but they didn't necessarily have formal power, right? And so they had expert level power. So informational power. This is what librarians have, people who are keepers of the data, people who have strategic knowledge. If you go inside a large healthcare system and some person is the Medicare and Medicaid researcher, or they have very specific insights or information, they tend to hoard that stuff. They gatekeep. They tend to lock that stuff down because it has a lot to do with their value, and it has a lot to do with their perceived power. And so you need to understand when that's happening and what the scenario looks like and what you can do to address it. So referent power. Referent power is built on trust, credibility, and your personal brand and your reputation. I am who I say I am. If you go read what, I don't know, 18 people say about me on LinkedIn, it's true. Okay. If a bunch of people who you've worked with say you're a jackass and you're difficult to work with, it might be true. Okay. If people say that you're kick ass and you know what you're doing, and you provide a lot of value, and you really did them right, well, then you get a lot out of that trust and that credibility from your personal brand and your reputation. And I get all of my work comes to me from email or LinkedIn. I don't go hunt and peck for it. It comes into my inbox, and they'll say something like, "Hey, I saw your podcast with Debbie Levitt," or "I saw that you wrote this really long post or this really cool article about, standing up a journey ops team, and I want you to come do that for me, and can you do that?" And so I get a lot of work from that. So that's referent power. Reward power. The ability to offer incentives and rewards or change outcomes for others. This is people that work in HR. This is people who dole out bonuses, dole out title bumps, things like that. This is really prevalent in the military, but that's what reward power is. So communication techniques for in-person negotiations. Active listening. It's really important to be able to show that you're being attentive, to make that eye contact, Remember what I said, your upper torso is visible, your hands are visible, your eyes are visible. There's some people who are neurodivergent and, on the spectrum, they tend to struggle with this, but there are lots of things that you can do to remain focused, and you can control your breathing, and there's lots of things that you can do, but you need to look people in the eye. It's hard for some of us, but you have to do it. And you also, when people are sharing something traumatic or something concerning, you need to do the third box, mirror. You need to nod and show that you're acknowledging those things and that you understand them, right? Because you can say a whole lot with your eyes. You can say a whole lot with your facial expressions. Open-ended questions. Allow people to tell you stories. Allow them to elaborate on things. And when you do that, you can pick up information, and that's good for you, right? So because you can turn around and you can summarize and use that information to help garner a better position, a more salary. And I know a lot of this is going to sound, I don't know, almost manipulative, but in a way it kind of is. But this is just how things work. And when we do these better, we make more money and we can thrive. So mirroring, what is mirroring? Mirroring is basically if somebody has a more, let's say, aggressive tone, or they're more animated, or they're more excitable. Typically, if you pull back and you withdraw into your shell, that's not going to be a good fit, and they're going to end the interview or the negotiation. They're going to end it. This happened to me just recently. I got on a call with this guy, and I'm not joking. He was such a, I swear to God, I thought he was on drugs, or he just was jacked up on espresso or something, but he was like just off the rails. And I was in a really peaceful, calm mood. I had meditated that morning, and I had just come inside from walking my dogs in the backyard, and I was just like, oh, okay, I got to go talk to this guy about the service design work. And he was just on fire. He was just, you could tell he was lit up like a Christmas tree on the 4th of July. And I just wasn't having it. And so I felt myself kind of retracting, but then I started to say, oh, you know what, that's really exciting. And I had a project like that too. And, I started to kind of ramp up my voice and ramp up my energy to sort of halfway meet his, and the interview and the conversation just took a wildly positive change and turn at that moment. So just remember, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. Someone's kind of quiet and demure and sweet. You might want to, match that energy, right? Summarizing. This is really great that after meetings and after interviews and after conversations with clients, we have the ability to just click an AI button and translate and look at some themes of our conversation and get a full translation. This is just absolutely revolutionary in just the last 4 years that this has been going on. But you always kind of want to restate. Remember what I said, when you're asking those open questions and you're getting that information, that it's almost like qualitative ethnography or interviewing. When you get those key points, when they start talking about their kids, or they start talking about where they went to school, or they start talking about the big rocks that they're moving at their organization, and the strategies that they're dealing with at work. You basically can pull from those things and craft excellent responses to relate to them. You know what I mean? And typically, I like to map folks and stakeholders beforehand, and I do some secret mapping that's kind of like just like rough personas. I'll go look at their social media, look at their LinkedIn, and just see where we've had an alignment before. It's kind of odd, but many years ago, I worked at Macy's, Bernardines, and Bloomingdale's, and so did Debbie. And so, one of the first times we talked, I think I brought that up, and I thought that was unique because we had both been at a very similar, the same retail environment. So there's that. Communication techniques for virtual negotiations, similar to what we just said. Clear agenda setting. If you don't know what PAL is personal, is purpose, agenda, and length. If you are conducting meetings, sending meetings, or attending meetings, and it doesn't have a purpose or an agenda in it, I would decline and ask. And there's a reason. You want to know what the meeting is about so that you can prepare. You want to know what the agenda is so that you can have your thoughts laid out and kind of ready to roll in your mind, or even your notes ready to address those concerns so that you sound smart. And you can summarize those things like we just mentioned on the previous slide with action items. Okay, these are my action items. We discussed X, Y, and Z. I'm going to get you these files. I'm going to send you these artifacts. I'm going to spruce up my portfolio and give you the password to it by the end of day tomorrow. And so make sure you've established your agenda and you've clearly set those goals and you understand the structure before the meeting. Sometimes when you're interviewing or you're about to talk to a potential client, they'll say, yeah, you're going to meet with the team. Well, who the hell's the team? I want to know who I'm going to speak with. Can you please give me a list of the folks who are going to be there? Because sometimes they're not all on the actual call. And what will happen is one person, like an admin, will set the meeting, and you'll drop into a meeting, and you're in it's a tag team, and there's like 5 people in there. And you're like, whoa, what the hell is this? And you're caught off guard and by surprise. And people who are neurodivergent, people who are on the spectrum, people who have ADHD, this is stressful for us. And it's very concerning for us. We don't like things like that, right? That's how we get sent into tailspins and we have meltdowns. Maintaining engagement. Use interactive tools like polls and visual aids. I'm sure if you've been going to this conference with Debbie, you've seen a lot of interactive tools and polls and visual aids, artifacts, things just like this, PowerPoint. I do a lot of journey mapping and blueprints, a lot of service design. So I'm always sharing different types of visuals, and those are very important when you're trying to captivate people and keep people's attention, and you're trying to have your way with them, so to speak. Right? Nonverbal cues. Monitor tone, monitor people. Sometimes people won't say anything negative to you, but they'll roll their eyes a little or they'll look off. Sometimes when you start talking about empathy and dignity with a bunch of technicals, like people who are developers, they tend to do you can just tell in their mind they're yawning at you, even though they might not do it out loud. And they're just like, they're doing that Dave Chappelle thing, wrap it up. Be mindful of those nonverbal cues. Sometimes people don't say anything, but they look away. They look disinterested. They look like they're looking down at their phone on the call. Make sure and get their engagement back by saying their names. Repeat people's names, okay? Follow-up documentation. This is your action items. This is, hey, summarizing the key points of the meeting or the email or whatever it was, the interview. And make sure and reach back out to them. Hey, thanks for your time today. Those 2 things that I said I would get to you, I'll get them to you by end of day, blah, 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 blah. And be your word. Always deliver. So by applying all of those kind of negotiation principles and frameworks, we can navigate complex negotiations effectively, and we can secure better compensation, resources, and opportunities, right? It's a fundamental aspect of organizational dynamics, and it plays a critical role in your employee relationships, in your contracting relationships, your job roles, and in your interactions with your supervisor and your supervisors and coworkers, and with human resources. So I'm kind of bouncing around back between full-time contractors, consulting, everybody. We'll get a little bit more pointed in a second. So the phases and facts and factors of negotiation. Phases of a negotiation. You're gonna prepare and you're gonna plan. You're gonna identify those objectives. You're gonna understand the interest of all parties. You know what's so funny is I do strategy for a living, and I always harp on SWOT analysis. I make fun of it. Your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities, blah blah blah. I make fun of those things. Roger Martin makes fun of them. But guess what? They're absolutely wonderful. A SWOT analysis is wonderful for your vocational endeavors. What are the strengths and weaknesses and opportunities about this specific job? About you pivoting from UX to product design? Or you pivoting from UX to being a PM? Or you pivoting from more of a research role to being a design ops? You need to have all of that plan kind of laid out. You need to know what's good and bad about those decisions and how you can make better decisions based on those types of things. So I'm actually recommending a SWOT analysis for your career or for your next job seeking endeavor. The definition of ground rules, establishing frameworks and protocols for the negotiation, including timelines and procedures. Make sure that that's all very clear to both parties. The clarification and justification. Share your perspectives, provide explanations, and substantiate your position to ensure mutual understanding. Be very clear, but be very firm. Bargaining and problem solving. Engage in discussion to reconcile differences. Explore healthy alternatives. Conflict is necessary. It's inevitable, and healthy conflict is actually great for work. It's great for design. It's great for innovation, and it's great for negotiations. If it's toxic or negative, then of course, once it crosses that line, it of course is not. But healthy conflict and a little bit of push pull is necessary, and sometimes that is what people fear the most about negotiations. And there's a lot of research around women being concerned about that, about how they're perceived and how they're viewed, and how they view that kind of that push and pull, and that being perceived as difficult instead of assertive. And we all know about these biases. They're there. And we can't control what other people do, but we can control how we respond to those things, right? So closure and implementation. You need to always finalize your agreement, outline terms. This is when you start doing your SOWs, your SLAs, all of those kind of agreements, and finalizing what it is that you're going to go do, or how this job's moving forward, or whatever it is, the job description, whatever it is. And we're going to get deeper into that stuff in a second, but just basically speaking, you're going to have these 5 phases almost always. Make them come to you. So like I said before, I don't go out applying for hundreds of jobs. I know that some people do, but I'm going to push back on why you're doing that. Okay, that's not wise. When your opportunities come into your inbox, you get as much as 10 to 30% more. Recruiters, hiring managers pay more for people that they seek out, and they're looking for that purple squirrel, right? They know how much they're going to pay. They know what the pay band is. If you've never heard the term purple squirrel, it's kind of like the same thing as a unicorn. It just means that really unique person who is a perfect fit. If the job description says you need to have 10 years of healthcare experience, or 10 years of banking or investment experience, you better have that experience. Because if you don't, you're wasting your time and theirs, because you're definitely not going to the top of the pile of 500 people, or 200, or even 50. Okay, so that's the thing, is we've got a lot of people clogging up the ATS system because they're not being who they are, and saying and telling the truth, and applying for things that they're good for. Okay, we're going to get into that in a second too. So just be mindful that you have leverage if you understand these things, and you want to be the best possible version of yourself. You want to tell it like it is. You want your profile to really express who you are and where you've been. But moreover, you want it to express where you want to go. Well, probably one of the most powerful things that ever happened to me in my career, one of them was, I told this story on another podcast, was I was coming from Miami, and I had all of this fashion experience and all of this, like taking pictures of models and putting them in ads and doing TV spots. And I came to back to Houston, where I was from. And I went to Ogilvy. Ogilvy is one of the biggest agencies in the world. And there was a creative director there. His name is Jay, and he's a pretty famous creative director now. He works for Material Design, worked for T3. He's worked for a bunch of big agencies. And what he said was, because I brought him my book, and it was to work on the Shell account. It was to work on oil and gas and petrochemical work. And I showed him these scantily clad women in bathing suits with camisoles and, bare midriff, like I had all of these really sexy models and things in my book, because that's what I did. I took those pictures, I photo retouched them, I did all sorts of stuff like that. And so he said, what do you want to do, more of this work, or do you want to do the kind of work that's here in Houston? Because what's here in Houston is basically a bunch of healthcare and a bunch of oil and gas, petrochemical, and environmental stuff. So you need to look like that animal if you want that work. And I said to him, because I was broke and I was a single parent, and at the time I really needed money. And I said, man, I want whatever's going on here. And so he said, you need to go retool your portfolio to look like what you intend to be and what you want to be and the kind of work you want to get. And I went and and this was probably the best information and the best letdown I ever had from someone. He didn't hire me, but he gave me something that was far better than a job. He gave me that gold in the form of that information, that wisdom. And I went back and I tweaked my portfolio, and I shit you not, within like 8 to 10 months, I was making a high hourly. I was working for other agencies, and I was starting to get around and make a name for myself. And it's like it changed within less than a year. So I just want to remind you of that. The gender differences in negotiation. We just finished talking about this a little bit. There's lots of research on this. Harvard has done tons of research on this. But men are generally more likely to initiate negotiations compared to women, which can impact career advancement and salary progression. So I'd like to say to any men on the call, if you're in positions of power, if you are a hiring manager, know that this happens, and know that women don't get a fair shake, and encourage them to come out of their shell and negotiate. I have given several women more money than they asked because they were asking for too little. And I continue to mentor several women to this day, 5 to be exact, and I think a couple of them are actually on the call. Economic outcomes. Men often achieve better economic results in negotiations than women. This is true. Sometimes it's because of aggression, sometimes it's because of assertiveness, and sometimes it's because women are concerned about how they're going to be perceived. They're concerned about that backlash. It's a fact in this business, especially in technology, especially in tech, that an assertive woman who speaks her mind will be perceived as something negative and antisocial, or but a man can do the same thing and get different results, especially from a man. Now, ironically, this is also true. When women get into positions of power, they can be mean-spirited and difficult with younger women, and there's lots of research on that. And so they can also do the same thing to younger men. And so it's just important to understand power and dynamics. And yes, gender comes into play, and yes, it's important. But let's not avoid all of these issues. Let's talk about them, and let's think about them, and let's embrace the bias, embrace the phenomenon. Let's look at what's going on, and let's try to do something better and be more conscious about how we do this stuff, and about how we encourage men and women to show up at work, and how we support and uplift one another. So there's that part. I could do probably 10 slides on gender and negotiation. But applying, consulting, freelancing, and contracting. This is where we're going to get into. So all you freelancers and contractors and people starting your own business, this is where it's going to get interesting. So people leave jobs for these specific reasons. They leave because of a bad leader, a bad manager, a bad CEO. You get fed up and you just need to get away, and you need to leave. Stagnation, you need growth. You're not being mentored, you're not growing, you're not learning, and you're being stifled. And in some cases, you're being held down and you're being treated like a donkey. I will tell you that, once certain types of people realize how good you are, they just keep dumping shit on your head and will overwork the hell out of you. And you'll be working 65 hours a week, while this other jackass that doesn't pull his own weight or her own weight is, meanwhile, he or she's phoning it in and working 30 hours a week and not doing anything, and they're making the same money as you. So just understand when that's happening and you see it, don't cry about it. You can raise your hand, but trust me, it's highly likely they're not going to do anything about it, and you're just going to get put on a PIP or get put on ice. Just be aware when that happens, it's probably time for you to go. And just know when it's time for you to go. Read those social signs and those cues. Know when you're loved, know when you're not. You're stretched too thin and you're being someone that you're not. You need to focus on core competencies. This is a big one, right? So that's why I showed you those personality kind of indicators and those creative assessments earlier. There's a whole lot of people doing work that they shouldn't be doing. There's a lot of failed technicals in our business, people who were not good at writing code, pretending to be researchers and designers, and they're doing a terrible job at it, okay? And they're abusing researchers and designers while they do it. And so there's a lot of this. There's a lot of people who have a certain type of background. They're linears pretending to be innovators. They're people who are more mathematically or linear inclined, and they're trying to be in innovation competencies, and they're trying to be creatives, and they're terrible at it. Okay, so goes back to that initial slide. know who you are. Go do those things, and it's going to give you an excellent picture of who you are and what you should be doing. And it's going to make you feel good because you're going to be like, wow, gives me direction and purpose. And secretly, when you look at the breakdown, you're going to be like, I always knew this, and this was always something that's deeply ingrained in me. And now I have verification from a scientific instrument telling me that I am more this or that, and I should be doing certain types of work that I'm not doing and I'm not fulfilled, right? So the very last one is forced RTO, return to office. You work remotely, and they're trying to let people go, and they're trying to do it in a way that basically leaves them off the hook for any responsibility to pay you. And so basically they'll say, hey, everybody's got to return to office, and they'll get a giant wave of people who quit and people who aren't willing to move back to the office. And then they'll hire back all of those same roles for 25% less salary, and they'll allow them to be remote. I'm seeing that happen a lot lately. Okay. Again, with the quoting myself, the problem with third-party recruiters is they say they serve you, but when speaking to the business, they say they serve the business. But who they really serve is themselves and their own commissions. But knowing this, you need to make it easy for them to serve you and represent you. Okay. So, job descriptions and features like salary, title requirements, and activities are very misleading. Sometimes these job descriptions are absolute BS. They're garbage. And they will put 5 different roles mixed up into one job description. I'm sure every single one of you has endured this. You've witnessed this firsthand. When you interview, ask what you'll actually do in your day-to-day. Make sure and clarify what happens in this role, weekly, monthly, annually. What are the expectations? What will you want to see with me from me in the first 90 days? Make sure and clarify all of that stuff. Whether you're contracting or in freelancing, or you're a full-time employee, you want to know all that, right? And it's great if you can get that in writing. Don't be afraid to negotiate, and you want it in writing for lots of reasons. Number one, to CYA, cover your own ass. And number two, when you go to ask for a raise and you go to negotiate a better salary or a pay bump or a title bump in a year, you have that information that says, look, you originally asked me to do X, Y, and Z, and I'm doing X, Y, Z, PDQ, and LMNOP. I'm doing all of these other things in addition to. So once you can prove that and show that on paper, that's very powerful, and it's leverage, and it's in your best interest to do that. So don't be afraid to negotiate and bargain. Don't be afraid to mix it up, right? And the more you do it, the more you practice. I'm going to show you a great way to practice. The better you're going to get at it, or the more money you're going to make. You also need to consider the company when you're going to work somewhere. Someone who's a mutual friend of Debbie and I's, about, I don't know, maybe like 8 months ago, a year ago, I can't remember. He basically was doing a contract, and he was being paid a certain amount of money. I'm going to make up a number because I don't remember. And he was basically making, like, let's just say he was making $100 an hour. And so he was really happy, but it was like a 90-day or a 6-month thing, and it was winding up. And he basically said, hey, I just got this offer from Google. He was working at a no-name brand company that I had never heard of, and you haven't either. And he was making a decent amount of money, but it was temporal. It was this. It had a shelf life, right? It had a thing. It had a short span, and he was basically outside of that. And he was getting an offer from Google for much less. And he was like, I'm not sure I want to do this. And I was like, hold on a minute. You definitely want to do it. And here's why. You want that big brand energy. You want that big logo. When you have a Google on your resume, when you have it on your profile, that carries a lot of weight. It has a lot of weight. There's a big perception that, you're big time if you work at a FANG company. I realize a lot of them are unethical, and I wouldn't work for most of them. But I have worked for a couple. I have worked for Google. I have worked for Amazon. But I would definitely never touch Meta. but that being said, he didn't want to take the less money for Google, and I was trying to convince him that he needed to. And I don't remember if he ever did or not, but I sure hope he did. So weigh your options and be tactical. No job's perfect. Before making big decisions, weigh all the trade-offs. Know what you're getting yourself into. Um, will there be any training? Do they give you an allowance annually to attend, like conferences or trainings? Do you get reimbursed for going back to school? Do you have a kick-ass 401k? There's a lot of different things that are part of that total compensation that could be a sweetener. Like, I don't tend to bite off or get too excited about, beanbag chairs and free kombucha on tap and shit like that. But I will definitely get excited if somebody says they have 100% 401k matching from day one. Okay, that's something to not sneeze at and to consider, especially if you're getting into your late 40s or 50s. You need to be thinking about your retirement, and so all of those things matter. So if they have a couple of dollars less on the base pay, but they're willing to do things like that, and so if you put $1,000, $2,000 in every month, and they're willing to match it 100%, that's great. So think about things like that. Just weigh all of those options and trade-offs. Again, with the SWOT analysis. Strategy over frequency. The ATS and the job hire sites like LinkedIn, Workday, they filter out your resumes based on associated keywords. Make sure and put all of the most important buzzwords for your business, your industry, what you do, your skill sets. Make sure and put that stuff in your profile and in your resume, okay? Because you want the ATS to scan that stuff and for you to come up top of mind. And lastly, in this section, practice with Google. Google Warm-Up is basically an interview tool that allows you to kind of practice interviewing, and you can put your interview in there. You can write an interview with like Chat GPT. There's a lot of different things that you can do to go practice this stuff. But Google Warm-Up allows you to interview, and it gives you instant feedback on your answers and how you're responding, and it helps you become a more confident speaker. All right. It's a great tool. So table stakes, make sure and be yourself. Don't forget that I said refer your friends who are unemployed if the job's not good for you. When recruiters lowball or won't answer questions, block them. If they won't tell you who the company is that they're recruiting for, if they won't tell you what the pay rate is, and they keep doing well, how much do you need? And they keep doing that kind of shit, block them. Block them immediately, because the more you block them, the more they go away. And those people are like cockroaches, and we don't want them in the industry. Create pre-formatted response emails for copying and paste. Have a notes program wherein you've already responded to key things like, yes, I have healthcare experience. Yes, I have oil and gas experience. Yes, I have banking and fintech experience. And these are the bulleted clients that I've worked for and some of the projects that I've worked on. Have those things ready. I've been in fintech for 15 years, and I've done a Bank of America, Capital One, and Washington Mutual 15 years ago. If you do that sort of thing, it makes your life a hell of a lot easier, and it starts to automate some of these things that are taking you a lot of time. Okay, so shave off some of that time. This is really important. What's your hourly, daily, weekly, hour strategy and kind of outlook on how you get paid? Because I look at hours as buckets. And if you have a bunch of different services, and you list out the services and what you're willing to charge for each service, because a lot of people just have one flat rate. They have one flat rate. They're like, I'm $100 an hour no matter what. Well, guess what? What if it's just doing a little BS logo? What if it's just writing some ad copy for some, or some slider copy and doing some UX writing? You're not going to charge $100 an hour for that. You can, but you won't be competitive. If you have, let's just say 5 or 6 services that you're good at, and this one's $50 an hour, this one's $80 an hour, this one's $100 an hour, this one's $120 an hour. The more technical it is, maybe for prototyping, if you're doing dev management or product management, maybe you'll charge a lot more for that than you would maybe just designing, I don't know, slider art or the kind of stuff that goes in social. Okay. But if you do all of those things and you have those services and you have examples of those things that you've done in the past, then it makes it really easy to look at every single hour on your calendar like a bucket, and you want to put some type of dollar in that bucket. Sometimes it'll be $50, sometimes it'll be $100, but at the end of the month, it'll be you'll have a substantial amount of money in there. And you also need to determine, you need to make a contract with yourself. How many hours am I willing to work per week? If the average Joe or Jane is willing to work 40 hours, which is really 35 after their breaks and their, things like that. And I say that I want to get ahead and I want to be a little bit better than the average person. I'm willing to work 60 hours a week. Okay, what does that look like? Is that 8 hours, every day, or is that 10 hours for 6 days? And make a contract with yourself. You can't always stick to it, but I've done this and I've said, look, I'm going to work Monday through Saturday, and I'm going to be willing to work 10 or 12 hours a day as long as it's something that I love and I'm enjoying. I work long hours to get the paycheck that I want and to be able to have the lifestyle that I want, right? Always make sure that in that first DM, you get the company, the hourly, the salary, and the pay range. This is most important. These last 3 bullets are the most important bullets. Be yourself. All recruiters, all hiring managers are looking for that unique purple squirrel. They're looking for the perfect hire for that job. Be who you are. Do not create 5 different portfolios and resumes. I see this all the time. I see people, recruiters and hiring managers telling people to create 5 different portfolios. Do not do that. You want 5 different responses to different types of work, but don't go create 5 different portfolios and resumes. Do not call yourself different things. If you're trying to get a job as a high agency IC, or you're trying to get a role as a lead designer, but they go to your website and it's called Acme Design, and you're the CEO of Acme Design and there's nobody else at the company, well, you're going to lose people right there. You're going to lose hiring managers. You're going to lose people because there's a huge disconnect. It's like, okay, we're not looking for CEOs of fake companies. We're looking for somebody who's an IC and does this exact work. You need to make it easy for them to do business with you. I'm going to keep saying that. This is probably the most important slide in the whole deck. For your tools, your methodologies, tools, and skill sets, you've heard the T-shape thing before, right? For methodologies, tools, and skill sets, you need to have that T. You need to have multiple T's and tools in your tool belt. Your tool belt needs to be deep with tools. But for industries or sectors, you want to focus. You want to be the healthcare guy or gal. You want to be the fintech or banking guy or gal. Why? Again, because in a time like this, when there's massive competition, when things are heavy and saturated, and a lot of people on the job market, they're not looking for these half-assed people that are ambiguous or don't have the specific experience they're looking for. It would take you a decade to start working in healthcare and understand all the nuances and the acronyms and the different types of stuff that goes on in the healthcare industry. It would take you a decade to understand fintech and banking and investments. Okay. So if you have that type of experience, really double down on it. Brand yourself, your personal brand that. And the reason is you just want to be top of mind and you want to bubble up to get that job past all the competition who really doesn't measure up and doesn't meet those minimum job requirements, and they're having an identity crisis, right? You want to know exactly who you are and what you provide. And if you do that, the right work will find you. They'll come to you, I promise. Okay. Oh yeah, this is a bummer of a slide. Embrace change. By 2027, AI automation is going to replace 60 to 70% of specialized skills. So that goes back to what I was just saying. You want lots of skills. You don't want to be a specialized person. If all you do is evaluative and QC engineering and you test buttons and do A/B testing, trust me, you are not going to work in the next year or two. Specialization used to mean security. Now it's a huge risk. 15 years ago, it was cool to just be an evaluative QC engineer or testing person or someone that just does evaluative experiments. You cannot do that now. Okay, you need to wear more hats. You need to have more T's in your tool belt, just like I just said. It's like paying dividends and compounded interest for your future, right? And the more skills you add, the more they augment and they're force multipliers of all those other skills, right? So you need to add different skills intentionally. You need to be playing with tools that people are playing with, whether that's Replete, Cursor, Lovable, all these tools that people are messing around with. You need to go dip your toe in them if you're a designer. If you're a researcher, I know this sucks and this hurts. It hurts me, but you need to be playing around in user Zoom, user testing, and Dscout, because almost every large organization is using that stuff now, and they're doing that random crowdsource research. So if you show up and you're like, I hate fake personas and I hate random crowdsource research, and that's how they get down, well, guess what? You just talked yourself right out of a job. So just have a line, know what you're willing to do, what you're not willing to do, and make a contract with yourself. You know what I mean? There's plenty of stuff I won't do, trust me. The stronger your personal and professional brand is, the less selling and applying you have to do. It comes to you, right? So let's go over this. This is going to be fun. I love people who say we don't need a portfolio, that researchers and designers and UX designers don't need a portfolio. Everybody needs a portfolio. I don't care what you do. I don't care if you make spice racks. I don't care if you knit and crochet berets. I don't care if you make greeting cards, websites, or software, or you are an animator or a graphic designer, an illustrator, or a writer, or a strategy person. You need a portfolio. Everybody has a portfolio. Just about every website is a portfolio, right? If you know anything at all about UX, and you look at that gallery view that has, where you select any kind of thing from the top nav, and it shows you a bunch of cards, like 4 across and infinite scrolling down. That is called a gallery view. It's also called a portfolio view or a grid. Those are the terms that it's called. It's a portfolio view or gallery, and every single website has that. Why? Because they're showcasing their wares. They're showing you what they're selling you. That is a portfolio. Amazon portfolio. This is a portfolio. Etsy. Etsy is probably the biggest aggregate, other than like what are the goofy ones for design that everybody uses? Dribble and all those. Okay, these are aggregates for portfolios. That's what Etsy is. I make belts. I make dog collars. I sew wallets. Okay, those are all portfolios. Portfolio. eBay is a portfolio site. Okay, I wanted to show you this because it's kind of hilarious. I've had many different iterations of my portfolio over the years, and that one in 1992, I'm not joking, that thing is 6 inches thick and it weighs about 50 pounds. And we used to be made to leave those things behind, and a creative director or design director would look at the stuff in there, and it didn't matter if you did TV, video, whatever, you would print out the screens on a giant storyboard and show the video, because you couldn't be guaranteed that the person had a reel or a VHS player to look at your reel. And so you had to print everything out. And I was an animator and an illustrator at the time, and I also did a lot of advertising, marketing, branding, positioning. I did a lot of Photoshop, photo work, okay? And I used to carry that giant, massive thing around. And imagine being in Houston in July, and it's 112 degrees, and you're pulling that thing out of your shitty Nissan pickup truck with no AC in the damn thing. So when people say we don't need portfolios and put all this toxic portfolio culture, please tell them to shut up. Okay, I've always had a portfolio. You need one too. The one down bottom is 1/3 of the size of the one on top, and that was by 1999. We got it down to 1/3 of the size, and it only weighed about 10 pounds. And so after that, it was on a CD-ROM. After that, it was on a Flash website. It was all animated. And now, is my website to the right is what my website looks like now in 2025. So yes, you need a portfolio. Please have a portfolio, and it's better if it's personally branded, your name. And I don't care if it's a Wix site, I don't care if it's a WordPress site, I don't care if you hand code it. If you do web design, you really should have your own website that you've designed by hand in Webflow, or doing your own HTML, CSS, React, whatever. But you need your own. You need a portfolio. Okay, that's not debatable. All right. There's a lot of different presentation methods for your portfolios and for your case studies. The STAR method is probably the most common. What was the situation? Describe the problem statement that you're addressing. Describe the task. What was it that you did, and what was the action? What happened, and what was the result? What are those back-end measurements, if you can have them? Now, let's be really clear. A lot of enterprise level designers and consultants don't get those measurements on the back end. It's okay to say, hey, I just went and did all this kick-ass discovery work, and I did all of the solutioning and ideation. I did some interviews, I did some personas, I did whatever. And it turned into this prototype, and then show the prototype and just say, if they ask, the project got sunsetted, deprecated, it went away. Sometimes interest wanes from leadership and they move on and they do other projects. They get excited about other projects. Sometimes it just fizzles out. Sometimes the funding dries up. Sometimes you get pulled off of that project because it's going downhill and they move you on to something bigger and better. But guess what? You may have just spent 6 months or a year or two on really great work that never came to fruition. Okay. Or it was short-lived. Okay, that happens all the time. Don't be afraid to tell that story. All these people telling you that you have to have all this toxic metric theater and that you have to show your that you increase the click-through rate or the signups or blah blah blah, or else don't show it in your portfolio. It's 100% bullshit. My entire website is filled with stuff that has no ending, no happy ending on it. Okay, and I get lots of work. I'm about to show you how much. There are also many other types of storytelling and devices and frameworks that we use. Simon Sinek's golden circle. Whoops, got a typo there. What, so what, and now what? The Mento pyramid of value, the ABT, the and, but, and therefore, and the story brand framework. There's a lot of different ways to tell stories. There's a lot of different ways to do your case studies. Pick one, go read about these. They're great. They're all useful. All right, perspective goals and creative visualization. This is really important. A dream written down with a date becomes a goal broken down into steps becomes a plan, and a plan backed by action becomes reality. A lot of us are struggling right now. We're struggling with all of these changes that are going on in the environment, in the zeitgeist of the design community, and it sucks. A lot of this stuff really sucks, and I'm with you, and I've been there, and I've gone through a lot of cycles, and I've been really broke in my life, and I've been really flush in my life, and right now I'm pretty flush. So I really want to share this stuff with you, right? Is we can only change our attitude, we can only change our perceptions and how we look at things. We can't change what's going on in the marketplace. We don't have that power. That's not within our locus of control. But what's within our locus of control is how we think and how we feel about ourselves and our self-talk. And I have a couple of slides about this, right? This is from Elizabeth Lindsay. A fantasy equals a goal without a deadline. An objective equals a goal plus a deadline. An intention is a goal plus a deadline plus a plan. That's strategy. Success, goal plus a deadline plus plan plus action. Okay, that is execution that turns into progress. Your fulfillment, personal goal plus deadline plus plan plus action. All right. Then you get a sense of accomplishment. You get a sense of doing something and being complete. That's fulfilling. Perspective, preparation, and strategy. I've read a whole lot of books, self-help books, psychology books, books about childhood trauma, things like this. Lots of stuff about neurodivergence and depression, things like that. And what all of these books basically say are just several things. They basically say the definition of depression and anxiety and stress is the inability to overcome your past. That creates depression. Okay, trying to be something that you're not creates depression because you're masking all the time and you're stressing and struggling being something that you're not. Not seeing yourself as having a future, that inability to see yourself as not having a future, all of that is depressive. Anxiety is the stress about a future that hasn't occurred yet. It's about stressing out about something that hasn't even happened. And we all do this. And I want you to make a list of your goals and make sure that they're realistic. And I want you to really concern yourself with your self-talk. And I'm getting ready to show you one. This is probably the most important slide other than that other slide in the whole deck is this one. The one after this one. We suffer more in imagination than we do in reality. Okay. This is someone that I really respect. Her name is Byron Katie, and I've read a lot of her stuff. And basically what she says when we say something negative to ourselves, like our boss doesn't like us, or I'm not being hired because I'm a woman, or I'm not being hired because I'm black, or I'm not being hired because AI is taking everybody's jobs. Okay. When you start saying these things, you get into a mindset and you get stuck, and we get stuck and we start to attract those things to ourselves, whether you realize it or not. It's called arguing for your limitations, and then your limitations becoming yours. And so what you want to do is you want to attract something better and more positive to you, right? So you need to identify that stressful thought, that thing that you're saying to yourself, like those examples I just gave you. You need to pinpoint that thought, and you need to catch yourself. And you're going to do this reframing technique. And it's one of the most powerful reframing techniques that will change your mindset overnight, right? You need to apply the 4 questions. Is it true? Is it true that my boss is always criticizing me? Okay. Can I absolutely for sure know it's true? Can I prove it? The answer will almost always be no. 99.99% of the time, it'll be no. Okay. How do you react when you believe that thought? How does it make you feel? Does it make you feel good, or does it make you feel terrible? Does it make you feel, negative and dark? Who would you be without that thought in your head? Okay. So if your original thought is my boss is always criticizing me, and then you do this turnaround, the turnaround, you find the opposite of the original thought, and you consider if that could possibly be true. Meaning you do the dichotomy thing. You do the exact opposite and say, is this possible? And then you find 3 examples of it. And so the example of it is my boss is always criticizing me, or my boss doesn't like me, right? The turnaround, number 1, is I'm always criticizing myself. That's actually the truth. I'm harder on myself than my boss or anybody is. Also, the second turnaround is my boss might not be criticizing me at all. They might just be giving me feedback that's constructive, and that's the way they do it. Turnaround situational is my boss might be under a tremendous amount of stress. My boss might have 20 other reports coming to them, and this is just how they communicate when they're in a hurry, and they really don't mean anything negative by it at all. So that original thought was not true. And can you imagine if you didn't do this turnaround and you kept dwelling on that thought? You would start creating static between you and your boss. You would create a rift. You would start speaking to them a certain way. You would start dreading communicating with your boss, having one-on-ones, things like that. And you would all be doing it because of a lie that you were telling yourself. And we all do this. Everyone does it. But you need to be cognizant that you're doing it. This is one of my favorite books ever written. It's called Creative Visualization by Shakti Gawain. What she says is you need to write a list out of the things that you want to do and be, and your expectations for how much money you want, the house you want to live in, how you want your relationship to be going with your significant other, and what you demand and expect from your job role, right? You write it down and you repeat it to yourself like a mantra, and then you say out loud with conviction, this or something better now manifest for me in total satisfying and harmonious ways for the highest good of all concerned and involved. And when you do this over and over again, magical things start to happen in your life, and you start to attract the things that you want and desire most. And as long as your conscience is clear, you're going to get those things. It's called the law of attraction. It's in the Bible. It's in the Quran. It's in all the major religions. Trust me, ancient Judaism called the Kabbalah. It's in the Kabbalah. It's really important that you understand this, right? We want to not argue for our limitations, and then our limitations become ours. We don't want to tell ourselves all these negative things that we're telling ourselves and that we're hearing in the marketplace. Most of them are not true. And if they are true, they're just true for that person. They're not true for you. They don't have to be, okay? There are things that we can do, pivots we can make, but the biggest pivot of all is the one that we do with our own mindsets and our own self-talk, right? You need to love yourself. I thought about whether or not to even show you this, but this is one of the last slides. It's not going to be in the slide that I give you guys. The reason why I'm showing you this is my account. This is not my account from my best month ever. It's not my account from 5 months ago. It's not my account from 5 years ago. It's my account from 7 or 8 days ago when I was making this deck. Okay, and what it basically indicates is that I made $50,000 this month. Now that, if you look at those pink dots, those are all my direct deposits, and 2 of them, the one that says processing and the 521, were actually late, and I'm owed $3,600 right now. So actually, I made almost $54,000 this month. I do this every month. My record is is in October of 2007, I made $86,000 in 3 weeks. So when you see these influencers online talking about their monthly recurring revenue, and what they're doing is they're regurgitating other people's content, and they're selling these bullshit classes, and they're telling you I made $10,000, and you go look at their stuff and they're basically frauds and they don't do this work. I get paid to do design work, and I do it a lot, and I'm good at it. Okay. And so I'm only showing you this as social proof because I want you to understand that if you put these things into action and you start attracting these things to you and you start being a different kind of employee, you're going to get a different kind of results. And you need to change the way that you look at things so that the things that you look at will change. Okay. You can't keep looking at them through the same lens and crying. You can't keep talking shit online. You have to be something greater than you were yesterday. And I'm telling you, it's attainable and you can do it. And that is my bank account, and you can have that kind of money too. So frameworks, tools, and templates. This is really important. You're going to need this stuff. I was originally talking to Debbie about what we needed to share, and she was like, I sure hope you're going to share some statements of work and stuff like that. And I can share my own and some of how I write them, but I created this particular slide to show you what a freelance contract template looks like, what an NDA looks like, what a master service agreement looks like, a statement of work, SOW template. And one of the most important things is this one at the bottom. That's the Cengage negotiation self-assessment. This is so important. If you click on that thing and you take it, it is a kick-ass document that basically you go through and you fill it out, and it shows you where you need to work on and what you need to hone better with regards to your negotiation skills and how good you are at the different parts of negotiation. It's an excellent tool. It's very well respected, and it's free, and it's in this deck. Okay. These are a lot of helpful links. Okay. 6 salary negotiation tools. These help you negotiate salaries. That link at the very bottom is tons and tons of links from a post I did for Massive Job Board post that I did, article. Top 10, 11 websites for remote work. If you're a remote worker, if you live in a strange place like Sardinia and you want to get some work, you need to know where to go get that work, and you need to work with people who are cool with people who work remote. And they're not hung up on you being stateside in America, and they don't say, like my friend Joel Barr discovered the other day, we were hiring remote workers so long as you're in Texas. So top 10 sites for gig work. This is just similar to that remote work, but this is for gigs. You know, that's a short-term turnaround. Let's get some in and out money. You know what I mean? 2 weeks, 3 months, that kind of stuff. Gig work. You can eat on that. Trust me, I've done it. This is a real important slide to me. 8 neurodivergent and inclusive job boards. If you struggle with ADHD, with autism, with anything, and you're neurodivergent or you have some accessibility issues, I want you to know that I love you. And that's what this slide's all about. Go find work. And people that appreciate you and appreciate your brain. All right. Well, that's it.
Giant wow. I don't know why my camera isn't working, but everybody can hear me, right?
I'm trying to find the actual interview. I mean, the actual meeting. There it is. Okay. And I have a request for everybody who attended. I can't see how many people are in the meeting. How many people are here, Debbie?
About 20.
So all 20 of you, thank you so much for attending this, and I appreciate this. I'm going to give this deck to Debbie. I don't know if she's putting it on her website or if I need to post it or whatever, but it's going to have all those links.
No, you can send it. Just email it to me. I'm going to put it on a Google Drive, and next week,
cool.
all the attendees are going to get a Google Drive link.
Okay, cool. What I would ask, please, is that if you enjoyed yourself today, if you liked any of these speakers, if you liked my talk specifically, say something nice about it on LinkedIn. I'm not an influencer. I'm not looking to hustle people out of money. I just told you I'm donating the money for this to something that's important to me. But I do appreciate the public pats on the back, because I get tired of arguing with a lot of people that I think are crazy and frauds online.
Now, Thomas, we are technically out of time, but you've got 3 questions in the Q&A, so hopefully you can give us some short answers, and then we'll take a long break. So the first
Okay.
question is from Ralitza, and unfortunately, she asked the question a half hour ago. It's a little time sensitive. She said, you mentioned a framework that wasn't in the slides that was useful to find out how creative someone is. What was that framework?
The Reisman, the RDCA, the Reisman Diagnostic Creative Assessment.
Excellent. Thank you. And we got 2 questions from a good friend, Michelle Packran. Her first one is, what's your advice for leadership level folks trying to get IC roles and being told BS, like you're too senior to do IC work?
I touched on that briefly, and Michelle, we'll talk about that in private, but that is exactly what Debbie Levitt and I am trying to do. I have been an IC, a high functioning, a super IC for a long time. And I'm telling you, that's the sweet spot. If you're over the age of 45 or 50, the sweet spot now, but the key is you need to make yourself look like that. Don't make yourself look like a director or a VP or leadership, because if you look like a VP or like you're looking for those types of roles and you're calling yourself that, they're going to assume that you're just going to escape the minute you get a better job that's more of a leadership role. And they're going to also assume that you don't know how to do the get down in the weeds, hands-on dirty work. So you need to paint yourself, you brand yourself as exactly what you're trying to go get.
It's like right now I'm trying to do either. I'm like, I'm open to anything, right? To being a leader or IC. I just want to work. I want to pay my mortgage. So I'm trying to, at the same time, I have like 30 resumes, dude, that I tweak for every friggin' job I apply to. And I'm trying to figure out how to like play both sides of it, because I just want to get employed. And it sucks.
I'm telling you, I'm being very honest with you. That's not a good strategy. You don't want to be all things to all people, because when you're all things to all people, you're nobody for no one. And you want to be the exact person that you are and what you expect and want to be. Have one resume, have one portfolio, and have one title that you're chasing.
Okay, so what do you do if the last few jobs on your portfolio or your resume are literally like branch chief? I tell someone I'm a branch chief and their brain immediately thinks, oh, you're too senior. And I'm like, dude, it's a bullshit government thing that just means supervisor. But people hear chief and they think, oh, you're too fancy.
You're gonna think this is crazy, and Debbie's gonna snarl at me. Lie. Say that you were a manager.
Yeah, I don't like that.
Just say that you were a manager, okay? When they go to verify your employment, okay, and you're going to do this to get in the door. When they go to verify your employment, they're going to see that you have this weird ass title. They're just going to see that you were a leader and a manager, all right? But I simplify it if you have to. If you feel like you're struggling with that, I would.
I
wouldn't lie, but nothing stops you on your resume from saying branch chief, parentheses,
manager.
Fancy name for a team lead of 3 people.
A team leader or manager. Yeah, exactly. More words are not bad.
Clarify it. Use your resume, put it on LinkedIn, you can put the title you had and then use the space to clarify it. I have that in my resume as well. And I also, by the way, have one portfolio, one resume. And I also wanted to quickly mention that a lot of these attitudes, and I don't know if Thomas agrees, are based on the company. So for example, I'm in a contract right now, and I've been meeting everybody in the UX department. I'm one of 4 researchers, and I think we have 10 or 12 designers. And almost every designer I'm meeting says, well, I used to be in leadership. I was a manager, but then I got laid off. And my buddy hooked me up with this job, and I'm happy to be an IC. And so I'm working in a universe of people who were all leaders and are just happy to do the work. And luckily this company evidently welcomes that versus thinking that we're untouchables.
No BS. The last 2 contracts I've had have been at large organizations who do not, and no offense to anyone on the call, they do not hire young people. They don't hire juniors. They only hire seniors, and they put them in roles just like what Debbie is talking about. So people are looking for us. They're looking for people who are older and who know what they're doing. All right.
It depends on who the hiring manager is, though. I just interviewed at Exxon last week. Apparently, they friggin' love me, but the person I'd be reporting to has half the experience I have. And so the word is, oh, you're just so senior. Ooh. And I'm like, okay,
Well, that
either
happened.
age discrimination, sex discrimination, or that kid who has that job is scared of me. And I think it's probably
Keep
that.
it moving. Keep it moving.
Called
Keep it moving.
ladders. I wrote about it in, I think, chapter 2. I learned that companies sometimes think that a Thomas, Michelle, Debbie, Melanie, we mess up the ladder because all of a sudden, oh, if our seniors have 3 years and Michelle comes in with 20 years, you've now messed up our career progression ladder. And if a company is going to think that way, I'm going to be mad about it for a half hour and then I'm going to let it roll off my back. We've got one more question, which is also from Michelle. Michelle says, how do you showcase leadership work in your portfolio? It's something I struggle with because most of the things we do as leaders don't make pretty case studies. Ooh, I should send you my portfolio. Thomas, what's your answer?
Well, you have to tell a great story. And a lot of, what's so funny right now is we just came out of this like post ZERP kind of environment where visuals and UI was all the rage and everybody was, Figma. And now we're getting out of that. It's changing, it's pivoting. And now what people want is they want business savants. They want people who are MBAs like both of you.
Yay.
They want people like me. They want people who are organizational designers and service designers.
And why aren't they friggin' hiring me? I'm at 60 applications, dude. Not a single interview except for Exxon because I knew people there. I'm fussing at the wind. Sorry.
You're Michelle yells at cloud, but we're all yelling at the same cloud. I mean, I've been through that. Half the people on this call, if not more, have been through that. So we get you. We're out there shouting at the zucchini plants. And, all you can do is just keep fishing. I mean, my contract that I'm in now, it came in the weirdest way possible. So there's no way for me to say, hey, do what I did. Someone who was on my podcast was offered the job. She didn't want the job because she didn't like what time zone she would have to work in. She asked me if I wanted the job. I don't mind working in weird time zones. It's a little bit like what Thomas was saying, where yes,
she
you
referred
can.
you.
Yes. So A, she referred me. B, it's also exactly like one of Thomas's slides where he talked about how if we do want to make limitations for ourselves, you can. You're welcome to have all the boundaries and limitations you want, but that person limited themselves out of a job because they didn't want to work California time from Europe. Yes, that's not the, okay, I'm going to bed at some pretty weird hours, but I said yes to that, and that's how I ended up with this job. It was not posted on LinkedIn. It was a word of mouth wacky thing. And so we just all have to remember each other as we find jobs. Thomas, anything else you want to say before I stop the recording and give everybody their break?
I hope everybody enjoyed it, and find me on LinkedIn. Say something nice about the conference or the presentation. I really appreciate everyone's time today. Hey, take care of yourself, and I hope you garnered something from it.
Thank you so much. I'm going to stop the recording and